I'm delighted to speak to Michael Useem, who's a senior professor at the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. Good morning, Michael.
Carl, good morning.
Nice to have you here in Montreal. Mike, your latest book is about doing business in India.
That is right.
And what we can learn from Indian management. What are some of the things you got in your work?
Well, we can learn a lot in that Indian companies are on an incredible roll. They're often 30–40% annual growth per year. So we set out to find the secret of their success. And we came out with 4 themes that are somewhat distinctive for Indian business. As we do write in the book, we think that Western business, Canada, US, Western Europe can all take a look at these 4 qualities and learn something from them.
So what are the 4 qualities, Mike?
In a nutshell, it comes down to these 4 distinctive approaches. Everything else pretty much the same in India, US, and Canada. But in these 4 ways, Indian business, just simply put, does it differently. They're number 1, more inclined to be involved in we call it a holistic engagement with employees. They focus on employees. To put that in a sentence, employees are assets and not a cost. Number 2, Indian companies exceptionally good at being adaptable to the most trying of conditions. Number 3, Indian companies are coming up with a pretty remarkable, what you might call value propositions. An automobile for $2,500, cell phone service for less than a penny per minute. And number 4, this is maybe the most distinctive of all, Indian companies do put a huge emphasis not on shareholder value, but on community, on country, and on family. There it is in a nutshell.
So are you suggesting that American, European companies emulate these 4 characteristics, that we can copy their model to some degree?
Yeah, you know, in some respects we used to do all that, and it was sort of lost as shareholders and big investors got the upper hand, pushed companies to do that quarterly reporting. Every quarter's got to be better than the last quarter. Very short-term focus. And as a result of that, I think we got into some of the difficulties that we've seen the last couple of years, certainly in financial services. And thus, I think it's useful for Canadian, US, European companies to take a good look, because I think we can bring some of these ideas back here.
It's intriguing that for many years, you and I taught Asians and other people our approach, but now it seems like we realize it's a two-way street finally.
And here's why I think is so interesting. So many Indian top managers have been to the US or to Canada or to Western Europe for their business education and beyond. Took those ideas back. We've had many out of our shop, for example, going back to run Indian companies. But as they returned, they literally developed a different way, partly similar, but also partly different way of doing business. And thus they've taken the best of what we have to offer and brought forward 3 or 4, we say 4 additional ways to make things happen, which I think at this point we ought to re-import back here.
What do you think of the 4 as the most challenging for North American companies?
I think in some respects the most challenging, but also the most important, is for company managers to rethink how they portray what they're doing. Indian managers rarely talk about shareholder value. If you look at a typical annual report of an Indian company, there it's all about employees, it's about purpose, it's about mission, it's about giving to the country what people need by way of inexpensive phone service or an automobile they can afford. And I think in that sense, this is different from what we often find, certainly in the US, where the drumbeat for shareholder value, it's what executives describe at their annual meetings, it's what they put in the annual report. They're disciplined, as we would say in the US, by the street. And I think it's this area that is most different, but also maybe most important for us to rethink, because arguably some of the financial crisis the last couple of years, a direct product of this short-term focus on shareholder value.
Part of this is for an Indian, they're excited about their country, they're excited about the stunning progress over the last 20 years.
Are they ever?
How do we get Americans, maybe the recession will provide Americans impetus to sense a real sense of national pride and a sense of we want to go somewhere again.
Yeah, and I think I think we've all come to appreciate that the world is our classroom these days, and to focus only on how we do it in a Western setting, we've done that for many decades, is probably going to be increasingly a mistake. We've got to look to China, we need to look to Brazil, we need to look to India for examples. It's not a way of saying we ought to become Indian. It is a way of saying if it's not invented here, it might be better than what we do here. We've got to take a look.